The Fleet of Valiant Prudence, a task force charged by the Ministry of Fervor Intercession with the recovery and research of Forerunner artifacts. The fleet forcefully secured Holy Forerunner secrets from human survivors, Kig-Yar looters, and rival Covenant bureaucracies alike. The Fleet of Valiant Prudence is comprised of exactly 10 ships, its supreme commander being none other than Ro Baratami. For starters, there is a single CSO-class supercarrier, the Long Knight of Solace, which is the flagship of the fleet. Its shipmaster is, of course, Ro Baratami. I will discuss his history later. The next largest ship is a single Varric pattern ORS-class heavy cruiser. It is commanded by Shipmaster Kantar Utarli, the second in command to Ro Baratami. Kantar Utarli was the first to deploy the idea of the Golden Path battle group. A firm believer in the prowess of the CCS-class battlecruiser, Utarli moved to reinforce the medium-sized vessel with not one, but two SDV-class heavy corvettes. The result was devastating. After that are the two Ket-pattern CCS-class battlecruisers. Their names and shipmasters are unknown. Finally, comprising over half of the ships in the fleet are the 6 SDV-class heavy corvettes. The only named one is the Ardent Prayer, its shipmaster being Ardo Morotumi. A leader of few words, Shipmaster Ardo Morotumi climbed the ranks with a mix of martial prowess and tactical cunning, eventually achieving general. Though his family held considerable power in the Covenant High Council, his personal ambitions were impossible to discern. The Ardent Prayer was one of many small Covenant warships that performed vital roles for their fleets, but possessed no battle honors of note and are rarely mentioned in High Charity's records. Mass assembled during an earlier era of glorious exploration, the Ardent Prayer and its sister vessels traveled to distant stars, charted dangerous slipspace routes, and fought civilizations that resisted the light of the Prophet's truth. But such matters are considered beneath the attention of true warriors. After 2 ages of dutiful service, the vessel met its end while undertaking a holy mission to recover artifacts at a planet humans called Reach. Every pilot aboard the Ardent Prayer was trained by famed Skymaster Dalamani and carried a crystalline cartouche etched with his 7 principles of the aerial hunt. The Energy Dagger is a wrist-mounted plasma blade that was utilized by the Sangheili within the Fleet of Valiant Prudence. These blades were only used by a select number of Covenant fleets. As Ro Baratami was able to acquire such rare technology as the Suspa-Ao pattern insertion pod, which was only bestowed to exceedingly devout commanders, it is possible that these daggers are equally withheld by their designers, and that Ro managed to silver ton his way into obtaining them. The Type 50 directed energy rifle, Heavy, is more commonly identified as a concussion rifle. Because of this weapon's relative rarity, it is theorized that its use is restricted either by branch or unit. As this weapon is most likely restricted to only certain units, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence's possession of it is probably the byproduct of Ro Baratami convincing either his ministry or a weapons master to allocate them to him. The Type 51 directed energy rifle, Improved, is more commonly identified as the plasma repeater. This weapon has only been encountered very recently and in very limited numbers. It is very likely it is either new to the Covenant arsenal or it is a branch-specific weapon. Halo Battleborn takes place in the year 2550 CE at the latest, but more likely 2549. As the novel cover depicts Ultras wielding plasma repeaters, that would mean the plasma repeater, by the time Reach was invaded, had been in service for at least 2 or 3 years. It is also likely to be restricted to only certain units due to its notable lack of appearances in Halo media. Additionally, it's important to keep in mind that the plasma repeater is a variation of the standard plasma rifle, which was considered blasphemous to make any adjustments to without the Hierarch's direct blessing. This might explain why it had only been seen in such limited quantity, and so the presence of this weapon within the Fleet of Valiant Prudence could perhaps be yet another example of Ro Baratami's prowess in seizing valuable ordnance. Given the omnipresence of the Kai pattern throughout the Covenant War, it's safe to assume the Morsam pattern seems to be an uncommon variant. As Ro has proven to be quite successful in his efforts to procure unique variations of Covenant equipment, it should come as no surprise that he managed to add this unusual pattern of Seraph to his fleet's arsenal. Known as the Suspa-Ao, or Fire Seed, to the Covenant, this pattern of small insertion pod was rarely seen. for artisans allied with zealot military orders jealously guarded the secrets of its construction. Only the most pious of commanders were granted the honor of requisitioning these pods, and only their use in war guaranteed replacements. As Ro-Baruta-Mi was a zealot, and quite a pious one at that, it is no surprise that he managed to acquire such an exclusive and eccentric pattern of insertion pod. This pattern is ever so slightly different from the pattern we see in the final game, but I believe it's reasonable to assume they possess similar exclusive qualities and were both employed by the Fleet of Valiant Prudence. Unexpectedly reserved and thoughtful for a zealot, Ro-Baruta-Mi had clawed his way through the ranks by exploiting weakness wherever it was found, taking advantage of greed, blind ambition, and ignorance from former comrades and superiors alike to seize the mantle of Supreme Commander. Handpicked by the Ministry of Fervent Intercession, the Covenant ministry that oversees the Zealot Order, Ro was given command of the Fleet of Valiant Prudence, an archaeological research and retrieval group tasked by the Prophets with the security and stewardship of Forerunner artifacts wherever they may be found. Comprising the personnel of this fleet was the Devoted Sentries, one of the many Zealot chapters within the Covenant and personally selected by Ro himself. Luminaries are specialized scanners placed aboard Covenant vessels to detect left-behind remnants of the long-vanished Forerunners. The greatest luminaries, ancient Forerunner artifacts themselves, are rare treasures jealously guarded by the Covenant leadership, and rarely allowed outside the holy sanctum of High Charity. One of these prizes was entrusted to Ro-Baruta-Mi upon his ascension to Supreme Commander and assumption of his duties as far-ranging scout and seeker of truths. It was through this luminary that Ro picked up on the first illuminations emanating from Reach, signs that the great works of Forerunners were once again rumbling to life and reaching out into the cosmos for their long-lost creators. During the summer of 2552, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence had been deployed to begin hunting down Forerunner relics. Following a trail of echoed whispers transmitted by the Reach artifacts, the fleet arrived in the Beta Eridani system, surprising a class of UNSC Navy cadets. The Beta Eridani Naval Training Range was an area within the Beta Eridani system dedicated to giving UNSC Navy cadets first-hand experience with navigating warships. Unbeknownst to the trainees, a Forerunner treasure in the system was drawing in the Fleet of Valiant Prudence. In normal circumstances, the presence of a mere 10 Covenant ships on the tactical display would seem to be an even fight, but Lieutenant Robinson knew that warships crewed by Navy recruits would be insufficient against even a seemingly small Covenant fleet such as this. As such, he ordered a full-scale retreat effective immediately. This left little opposition for the Fleet of Valiant Prudence, which quickly scoured the system for any and all Forerunner gifts in the vicinity. Brought aboard the Lana Isalis, these artifacts painted a path to Ro-Baruta-Mi's next destination, the Forerunner planet the humans erroneously dubbed Reach. The glyphs presented by these artifacts clearly translated to danger, damage, and the marks of the ancient builders. But Ro believed that this system held the final piece of the puzzle to locating the fabled homeworld of the Forerunners, Maithrillion. Overcome with unquenchable fervor and oblivious to the military value the humans have placed on this planet, Ro expunged all remaining human forces in the Beta Eridani system and began his journey to Reach. On or shortly prior to the night of July 23rd, 2552 CE, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence arrives at the planet Reach in the Epsilon Eridani system. With the UNSC unaware of the fleet's presence, Ro-Baruta-Mi deployed a team of zealots from the Devoted Sentries, under the command of a field marshal, to travel to Visegrad Relay, one of the 3 primary communication relays on Reach, to cut off transmissions between Reach and the other colonies. The team was also to retrieve any and all UNSC data stored at the facility that they could uncover. Once the team arrived at its destination, it quickly and covertly brought the communications relay offline, prompting the UNSC Army's Colonel Urban Holland to send several Army fire teams to investigate the situation, believing it to be the work of insurrectionists. The Zealot team quickly dealt with these troopers, with only 3 managing to survive, the members of Charlie 3, keeping the fleet's presence to the rest of the planet a secret. Some of the troopers were interrogated, though for what information remains unclear. Due to the lack of response from the troopers, on July 24, 2552 CE, Colonel Holland issued Noble Team, a group of 5 specialized Spartan 3s and 1 Spartan 2, to figure out what happened and turn the relay back online. After coming across a number of farmers and dead troopers, Noble Team was ambushed by a file of Ungoy and Tavone, better known as skirmishers, along with several banshees. After neutralizing this file, they proceeded northeast, where they encountered a demi-lance of Ultra supported by several other Sangheli. After eliminating these forces, Noble 2 and Noble 4 proceeded to Visegrad Relay, whilst Nobles 1, 5, and 6 searched for the missing army troopers. After searching several settlements, they eventually rescued the few survivors and linked up with the rest of Noble Team, where several waves of Covenant are raiding the relay. After fending them off, Noble Team entered the facility, where they came across a wounded army trooper, the corpse of a scientist of a data module, along with his daughter, who was cowering under a set of stairs. Moments after Noble 5 found her, it was revealed what she was hiding from. A demi-lance of 2 zealots and a field marshal dropped down, deactivated their active camouflage, and attempted to decapitate Noble 5. As Noble 6 began to fire at them, the field marshal fled past Noble 4, who had been posted at the entrance, and was presumably rescued by a Dextra Zur pattern spirit troop carrier. The 2 zealots took the corporal hostage to prevent Noble Team from firing upon them, falling back behind their special operations team. Nobles 5 and 6 eventually pushed through these lines, killing the 2 zealots. Noble 2 determines that the relay will take at least 2 weeks to get back online, and gets Noble 1 a direct line to Colonel Holland, alerting him of the Covenant's presence. Thus, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence loses its element of secrecy as a winter contingency is declared. Without the data module in his possession, the Field Marshal retreating from Visegrad Relay only managed to escape with limited information regarding the UNSC's excavation efforts. If nothing else, he was able to alert his Supreme Commander of what was likely already gleaned from his luminary, that something massive, forerunner in origin, was underneath Oni's sword base. Thus, on July 26, 2552 CE, Robarutumi entrusted one of his STV-class heavy corvettes with the honor of besieging the facility in order to bring the relic under Covenant control. Due to the sensitive nature of the engagement, the UNSC was prohibited from using orbital Mach rounds to disable the corvette. This gave the warship an edge, as the UNSC would be forced to fend off all of its forces before it could attack the corvette. In order to properly fend off the invading vessel, Oni requested the assistance of Noble Team. Landing in the courtyard, Nobles 2 and 6, with the help of several army troopers, overthrew the temporary fortifications the Covenant had set up around Sword Base, which they couldn't enter due to all the entrances being locked. After exiting the courtyard and bombarding a pair of Wraith mortar tanks, Nobles 2 and 6 proceeded to the 2 locations they most urgently needed to recapture: Farragut Station and Airview Base. Moving first to Farragut Station, they encountered, likely for the first time since the Covenant arrived at Reach, a Revenant light mortar tank along with a single file of Covenant. After breaking through the defenses, Noble 6 activates a generator so that he can subsequently turn the communication array back online, but is intercepted by a spirit delivering reinforcements. Noble 6 manages to activate the comms array despite the adversity, and proceeds with Noble 2 to Airview Base. Once arrived at the outpost, Noble 6 leaves Noble 2 to deal with the bulk of the defenses, while he ascends to the outpost's upper deck, where he finds a plasma launcher armed Sangheli general commanding the forces below. The corvette, which had been inexorably drifting towards Sword Base since the moment Noble 6 had landed, was now positioned right over the airbase, and was hailing plasma torpedoes down at the helpless air station. Noble 6 quickly killed the general, and the reinforcements dropped off by a spirit thereafter, allowing him to reactivate the anti-air gun. With the UNSC now dominating the sky, and the corvette being pushed to its limit, the vessel begins moving closer to Sword Base, directing its torpedo silos at the facility. Nobles 2 and 6 re-entered the courtyard, which is once again under Covenant control. The entrances to Sword Base have also been unlocked, which is likely how some of the fleet's forces managed to infiltrate the building. After fighting through the courtyard and the garage, the Spartans take an elevator up to the main atrium to find the rest of Noble Team, which is attempting to thwart the Covenant invaders. Slowly climbing to the storage level, Noble 6 reaches an opening where the corvette had punctured a hole in the building early into the siege, the debris having fallen down onto the southwest courtyard. He joins Noble 4, who's trying to clear the air traffic around Sword Base. Noble 6 picks up a rocket launcher as the corvette deploys 7 more Banshee flyers along with a Phantom dropship to impede the Spartans. After neutralizing all of the Covenant aircraft, the corvette begins to retreat, with a pair of UNSC lawn swords encouraging its withdrawal. The corvette, having fallen back enough to be positioned over a body of water and out of the blast vicinity of sword base, is immediately struck by a super macaron from an orbital defense platform and descends to the surface, eventually sinking into the bay. Over the next 16 days, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence would continue to clandestinely amass a ground army. By nightfall on August 11, 2552 CE, 4 corvettes loomed over Zerdok Ridge in the Vieira territory. Little did the UNSC know, these corvettes were covertly establishing at least 2 Tyrant anti-aircraft cannons and at least 3 enormous spire towers to not only teleport supplies from orbit to the surface, but to also cloak the Long Knight of Solace. Additionally, they also used a number of stealth pylons to cloud the UNSC sensors, which is what allowed the fleet to fortify Zerdok Ridge in secrecy. This was soon discovered, however, as Noble Teams June A266 and Spartan B312 eliminated the Covenant forces defending a stealth pylon, revealing to the UNSC the invasion force that the fleet was assembling. On the morning of August 12, 2552 CE, the UNSC launched a massive counterattack on the Covenant occupation of Zerdok Ridge that Nobles 3 and 6 discovered the night before. Hundreds of Warthogs, M274R Mongooses, M808C Scorpion main battle tanks, UH-144 Falcons, and D-77TC Pelicans, as well as at least 2 Paris-class heavy frigates, raced up the Vieira Plains towards an enormous Covenant defense force consisting of hundreds of Ghost Scouts, Revenant light mortar tanks, Wraith mortar tanks, Banshee flyers, Phantom dropships, and at least 3 Deuteros pattern Scarab platforms. Immediately following Noble 2 detonating the charges attached to the stealth pylon discovered the previous night, the UNSC strike force came under attack. While a majority of the vehicles continued to surge up the ridge, Nobles 2 and 6, along with a small convoy of Warthogs and Falcons, crossed the bridge over a ravine in order to raid one of the Tyrant anti-aircraft guns the Covenant had set in place. Before they could, however, a Wraith mortar demolished the bridge, causing several Warthogs to fall into the crevice below. Nobles 2 and 6's Warthog narrowly made it across, albeit dismantled, while any pursuing Warthogs were wrecked by the Fuelrod shade turrets stationed on the hill. The Spartans managed to fight to the first gun. Meanwhile, the bulk of the UNSC strike force was being blockaded by the 3 Scarabs and innumerable other vehicles. The Tyrant was preventing lawn swords from providing air support, and so the Warthogs and Scorpions were deadlocked until it was neutralized. After eliminating the surrounding infantry, Noble 6 destroyed the pinched fusion reactor powering the gun, causing it to explode. With the skies cleared for air support, 3 C-712 lawn swords carpet bombed the 3 Scarabs, severely damaging the Covenant blockade. This allowed the UNSC to move its Scorpions up and gave the strike force the upper hand. FFG 318 UNSC frigate Grafton, along with frigate Saratoga, moved into position over the ridge and provided fire support for the advance force below. Moving forward, the Spartans tumbled upon a Covenant-occupied mining facility. The Fleet of Valiant Prudence was using this facility for more than just a command outpost. That much is evident from the presence of a zealot of the devoted sentries. These zealots are seldom encountered throughout Halo Reach's campaign, and for good reason. They only oversee operations concerning potential religious matters. As Ro Barutami seemingly knows there's something buried beneath Reach, what area would be more rational to expect to find it than a mining facility? The Covenant were likely hoping to find Forerunner technologies somewhere beneath the excavation site. This operation was brought to a swift end, however, as Noble 6 assassinated the zealot charged with the supervision of the excavation. Upon exiting the facility, Nobles 2 and 6 commandeered what was presumably the zealot's Revenant, and took it south towards the second Tyrant anti-aircraft gun. Despite this gun being even more heavily guarded than the first, the Spartans eliminated the opposition and neutralized the artillery. Noble 2 sets up a forward observation post while Noble 6 is extracted by Noble 5's Falcon. With both guns offline, the UNSC is able to move its primary contingent up the canyon to engage the final Covenant defense before the spire. The Spartans' Falcon enters the spire's shield, but immediately received an electromagnetic pulse, causing them to crash. As the Spartans began moving deeper into enemy territory, what remained of the rest of the UNSC strike force began to engage the Covenant forces guarding Spire 2. As Noble 5 distracted Spire 1's infantry, Noble 6 infiltrated the control room, killed its complement, and disabled the Spire's shield. This allowed frigate Grafton to fire a Macaron at the Spire, destroying it immediately. As soon as the Spire was destroyed, however, the Long Knight of Solace became uncamouflaged, allowing Ro Barutami to put it to use. He immediately fired the supercarrier's super heavy excavation beam upon the Grafton below, obliterating it in seconds. The frigate Saratoga, along with Noble Team, barely escaped the rapture. Tower Station, located within an Oort cloud inside the Epsilon Eridani system, was an Oni research laboratory home to numerous Forerunner artifacts, the most promising of which was Site-17. The scientists assigned to the facility had spent years meticulously excavating layers of strange metals and ancient defenses. But, with the declaration of winter contingency, the researchers were permitted to conduct only one last dig over the course of less than 2 weeks, at which time the station's defenses will withdraw. In the midst of their hurried commotion to finish their project, the xenoarchaeologists activated the Forerunner's systems within Site-17, alerting Ro Barutami's luminary to the location of the dig. Enraged by the human desecration of the Forerunner object, Ro quickly dispatched a large unit of his fleet to rip the object from the vermin's grasp. This battle group was cut off by a detachment of UNSC ships led by Vice Admiral Stamford at some point between August 12th and August 14th, 2552 CE. As Operation Uppercut commenced on August 14, 2552 CE, the Fleet of Valiant Prudence once again assaulted Oni's sword base, albeit successfully this time around. Just like during the first siege, the invading vessel was an STV-class heavy corvette. The Fleet of Valiant Prudence, by this point, is stretched very thin. A portion of the fleet is attacking Tower Station. The 5 remaining corvettes were at different locations of the planet, most of them not even in the same semi-hemisphere. One of these corvettes was besieging Sword Base, and the Ardent Prayer was in orbit over Epos, some distance from the Long Night of Solace. Meanwhile, Shipmaster Utarali's heavy cruiser was separated from both the Ardent Prayer and the supercarrier. On August 13, 2552 CE, Noble Team was hiding in a cave from the Fleet of Valiant Prudence's forces. They knew the supercarrier would rip apart any resistance that came to support the UNSC, so Noble 2 concocted a plan to remove it from the playing field. Using a Shaw Fujikawa Translight engine as a slipspace bomb, they planned to bring it aboard a captured Covenant corvette, put the corvette on a refueling track with the supercarrier, and then detonate the bomb. On August 14, 2552 CE, Noble Team was deployed to Farkas Lake to retake the Saber launch facility. After meeting some resistance, including several insertion pods, they managed to enter the facility. Nobles 5 and 6 launched shortly after, along with the other Sabres along the research range, despite the other ports meeting clear opposition from invading Covenant forces. As they left, the army troopers within the facility evacuated in a Pelican dropship, implying that they had been overrun. Once they exited the atmosphere, the Sabre team regrouped at Anchor 9, a service repair and refit station for UNSC warships. As the FFG-371 UNSC frigate Savannah had donated its translate engine to the mission, it had to dock with Anchor 9 so that the engine could be attached to a Pelican. Meanwhile, Covenant exo-atmospheric forces were detected. The first wave consisted of 15 Banshee fighter strike craft. The second wave consisted of 4 Seraph strike craft. With the third wave came 19 Space Banshees and 6 Seraphs. The fourth, final, and largest wave saw 5 Phantom Gunboat assault ships and 7 Space Banshees along with 3 Seraphs arriving 16 seconds later. All of these waves together combined to a total of 41 Banshee fighter strike craft, 13 Seraph strike craft, and 5 Phantom Gunboat assault ships. Considering that the fighters assaulting Anchor 9 came from the opposite direction of the Ardent Prayer and the Long Night of Solace, it is reasonable to assume that they were a strike force sent from a vessel other than these two. Given the sheer size of the strike force, as well as the fact that both corvettes and battlecruisers do not possess Phantom gunboats, it is very possible that this strike force hailed from the ORS-class heavy cruiser under the command of Kantar Yutarli. As the Sabre team and the Savannah began to assault the Ardent Prayer, additional UNSC forces enacted a mission to distract the supercarrier. By probing the Law Knight of Solace from every side, Robarutami was out of position when the corvette came under attack. Additionally, a massive Ministry of Resolution fleet, likely the same one from the Battle of Sigma Octanus IV, the second fleet of Solemn Accord, was on its way to the system. If the fleet could not locate something of value soon, he would be forced to either evacuate and abandon many of his zealots still on the planet's surface, or face interrogation by the Hierarchs for his impotence and apparent ineptitude. For the first time in decades, Ro tasted fear. As the team engaged the corvette, the Ardent Prayer launched 16 Banshee fighter strike craft. At first glance, this appears erroneous, as Halo Warfleet confirmed the corvette only harbors 10. I inquired about this lore discrepancy on Twitter, to which Grimbrother1 of 343 Industries replied that Covenant tech was plenty modular enough to vary upon need. This would imply that, given the dire circumstances the Fleet of Valiant Prudence found itself in, the Ardent Prayer was allocated additional Banshee fighter strike craft for its operation. Back to the engagement, Noble 6 quickly disabled the corvette's engines, leaving it stranded, and then eliminated its remaining defenses before boarding. Immediately after boarding, Noble 6 and the UNSC airmen shut down communications between the Ardent Prayer and the rest of the fleet. Minutes later, they captured the hangar, which allowed for Noble 6 to deactivate the shield and for Noble 5's Pelican, along with a slipspace bomb, to enter. As Noble 5 defended the bomb, Noble 6 and the airmen headed for the bridge. On their way there, they arrived at one of the control rooms for the 6 Malusian pattern heavy plasma cannons, which were currently tearing the Savannah apart. Noble 6 eliminated the gunner, but it was too late. The frigate ruptured and exploded, leaving the team alone in Covenant territory. They moved to the bridge, where they found Shipmaster Ardo Morotumi, as well as several Special Operations Senghili, analyzing a hologram of Reach. If I may, I would like to conduct my own analysis of this hologram. Now, since there are 4 corvettes displayed on the hologram of Reach, we can assume there are at least 4 still intact as of August 14th. However, it is unlikely that the Ardent Prayer is one of the corvettes projected. You see, there is only one corvette shown to be within the Vieira territory. This corvette is directly over where Sword Base would be on the map, which is under attack at this time, meaning that this vessel is currently sieging the base. As the Ardent Prayer is not currently sieging Sword Base, that would mean this vessel displayed over Sword Base is not the Ardent Prayer. However, the Ardent Prayer has to be orbiting over the continent of Oppose, which is southwest of Sword Base, in the Vieira territory, as it is in close proximity to the Law Knight of Solace, which, once destroyed, crashed within 9 days' distance on foot from New Alexandria, which is also in Oppose. So, with it established that the Ardent Prayer is not any of the 4 corvettes displayed on this hologram, that would mean 5 of the 6 corvettes within the Fleet of Valiant Prudence remain intact by August 14th, 2552 CE. With that quick tangent addressed, the team then proceeded to eliminate the bridge personnel, including Ardo Morotumi, and then placed the Ardent Prayer on a refueling track of the supercarrier. They then quickly rushed back to the hangar where Noble 5 was currently defending the bomb from Covenant attackers. He and Noble 6 ward off several more waves of infantry before regrouping by the bomb. The slipspace bomb's timer had been damaged by plasma, causing it to malfunction and require manual detonation. With the supercarrier directly overhead of the corvette, Noble 5 bid Noble 6 farewell before throwing him off of the corvette and activating the slipspace bomb, destroying both the Ardent Prayer and the Law Knight of Solace, the warships, as well as Robarutami, evaporated by the explosion. Moments later, the second fleet of Solemn Accord Barutami had ever so feared emerged from slipspace over Reach, throwing the UNSC into disarray. By this point, there is a maximum of 7 ships still intact. The ORS-class heavy cruiser is the only ship confirmed to still be intact, however. There are 3 ships confirmed to be destroyed: the CSO class supercarrier Long Night of Solace, the STV class heavy corvette Ardent Prayer, and 1 unidentified STV class heavy corvette. With the fleet spread thin across the planet, and the mighty supercarrier, along with its supreme commander, vanquished by the slipspace rupture, Kentar Utarali assumed command of the remaining ships. In one final effort to acquire the artifact that has eluded them during their entire occupation of the planet, Utarali gathered the fleet and headed for a station near Reach's lesser moon of Turul, where the object was supposedly being held. Only an insignificant picket fleet stood between the fleet and its last hope of honor. Oddly enough, it would seem not all of the Fleet of Valiant Prudence convened with Kentar Utarali. As it happens, the field marshal that Noble Team encountered at Visegrad Relay seemingly continued to hunt the Spartans and the knowledge they held on the Forerunner ship buried beneath the Bab Kapha ice shelf. Acting as a pseudo-recurring antagonist throughout the game, he appears 2 times after the destruction of the Long Night of Solace, on the surface of Reach rather than with the splintered Fleet of Valiant Prudence. His first of the 2 appearances was at Olympic Tower, where he assassinated Noble 2. He once more appeared at the shipbreaking yards in Azad, where he and a lance of 5 devoted sentry zealots killed Noble 4, desperately attempting to prevent the mass driver from being manned and firing at the CCS-class battlecruiser moving into position. Their efforts were thwarted, however, as Noble 6 neutralized the entire team and used the mass driver to disable the cruiser. Speaking of the cruiser, I personally hold the belief that this specific vessel hails from the Fleet of Valiant Prudence. I base this off the thematic sense in which it is presented. Although these can now be considered non-canon, the Halo Reach world premiere trailer, as well as the game's cover art, depict a battlecruiser illuminated by lightning. In the opening cutscene of the Pillar of Autumn, the cruiser that appears at the end of the mission is illuminated in the exact same way, by lightning. This thematic continuity, along with the fact that the field marshal that was part of the Fleet of Valiant Prudence was delivered from a phantom dropship seemingly deployed by this cruiser, leads me to believe that this cruiser also came from the Fleet of Valiant Prudence. However, there is little evidence to confirm this. It is possible that the Fleet of Valiant Prudence's story continues even further, beyond the fall of Reach, beyond the Covenant War, and beyond the post-war conflicts. They could very well still be active during the created conflict. Back in March, Grim Brother 1 released a cannon fodder overviewing the story of a new novel, Halo: Shadows of Reach. Supposedly, a powerful and ruthless faction has established itself as a vicious occupying force on the planet with their own reasons to be there. Now, I mentioned earlier that Kentar Utarali had conjured up the Golden Path battle group formation. The description for this formation also denoted Utarali as a fleet master. We know he became fleet master of the Fleet of Valiant Prudence after Robarutami perished, but it is unknown what happened to him after moving towards Turul, as this faction also seems to possess Morsam patterned Seraph strikecraft, which we established earlier to be a rather rare variant of the vehicle that the Fleet of Valiant Prudence also made use of. He could very well still be looking for Forerunner artifacts on Reach in October 2559. We shall find out come September 22nd, 2020. Farewell.